Story 1. The first time I ever went to Las Vegas, it was not just a passing through. I had embarked on a cross-country road trip, and since Vegas wasn't too far away from my starting point, I decided to spend the first night there to see what all the hype was about. However, being only 20 years old, I soon realized that being under 21 limited my options. The nice casino hotels required guests to be 21 or older, which meant I had to settle for less desirable accommodations. It was frustrating, but I didn't let it dampen my spirits. I was traveling with my girlfriend at the time, and together we explored the city during the day, trying to find ways to entertain ourselves. The evening came, and we strolled up and down the famous Las Vegas Strip, taking in the sights without having to show ID. It was an enjoyable distraction from the impromptu flight we had to take across the country due to extenuating circumstances that were irrelevant to our Vegas adventure. But little did we know that the real underbelly of Las Vegas was about to reveal itself when we decided to turn in for the night. The only place I could find near the strip that allowed me to book a room was a sketchy motel, complete with a sex shop and a strip club across the street. Just walking from my car to the motel door was a frightening experience. To add to the unease, the person staying in the room above us stared at us while smoking a cigarette on the breezeway. The door to our room showed signs of previous break-ins, so as soon as we entered, we barricaded it with a rug and a chair. We were on high alert, but exhaustion eventually overtook us, and we settled into bed to watch some TV. However, about an hour later, things took a disturbing turn. The person in the room above us became extremely loud, stomping around, talking loudly on the phone, and making a ruckus with the chairs. It seemed like they were purposefully creating as much noise as possible. At one point, we heard the door open, and the person began conversing with someone on the breezeway. The discussion quickly escalated into a heated dispute, turning into a shouting match. Moments later, the door slammed shut, followed by a woman screaming. The screams were more anger-filled and indicative of someone in peril, so I hesitated to call the police. It appeared that the situation was de-escalating into a discussion once again, and I preferred to mind my own business. However, we couldn't help but listen as the two individuals continued their heated exchange for several minutes. During their argument, objects were thrown across the room, producing alarming sounds upon impact. The situation was becoming increasingly concerning, and I felt it was necessary to contact the motel's front office, even though I doubted anyone would be available at that late hour. Unfortunately, before I could even find the number, the situation upstairs escalated further. There was a tremendous crash, followed by the sound of bodies hitting the floor. The level of detail in the noises was astonishing, as if we could visualize each violent interaction taking place. They were both on the floor, struggling to overpower each other. One person grunted and yelled at the other to shut up, while the woman screamed in agony. The thuds of them physically attacking each other were audible. I abandoned the idea of calling the office and dialed 911 immediately. I reported the active situation to the police, and when I provided the address, they seemed to already be aware of what was happening. They scolded me for not calling sooner, and I couldn't help but feel they were right. Within minutes, several police cars swarmed the parking lot in front of my room, their sirens blaring and lights flashing. Fearing a potential shootout, my girlfriend and I sought refuge in the bathroom at the back of our motel room. Upstairs, the aggressor must have noticed the commotion outside and attempted to flee. We heard footsteps hurriedly retreating, followed by a cacophony of screams and shouts from the police. Then, suddenly, silence engulfed the motel. After a while, we heard the distant wails of ambulance sirens. Thankfully, there were no gunshots fired, but the events that unfolded were still shrouded in mystery. When the police came knocking on my door to gather my statement, I couldn't resist asking them what had happened. To my shock, they revealed that the man occupying the room above us had ordered the services of a prostitute but found himself unable to pay. Instead of settling the matter peacefully, he resorted to attempting to rape the woman. The extent of the assault remained unknown, and honestly, I didn't want to know. Regret flooded my mind as I realized I should have called the authorities sooner. However, had I done so, he might have managed to evade accountability. As it turned out, when he tried to escape, he was met with a taser's electric shock while descending the stairs on the far side of the breezeway. The intense muscle contractions caused him to lose control, resulting in a fall down a dozen or so steps. His descent culminated in a sickening crack as his skull met the unforgiving pavement. Considering the man's previous actions and overall character, I couldn't help but feel that he received a measure of justice even before the events of that fateful night. The police shared some details about his past, solidifying my belief that he deserved the grisly fate he met. In the aftermath, we couldn't shake off the horror of what we had witnessed. It was a stark reminder of the dark underbelly that exists amidst the glitz and glamour of Las Vegas. The city's reputation for hedonism and excess seemed to take on a more sinister aura. Needless to say, our stay in Las Vegas was tainted by this terrifying encounter. We decided to cut our visit short, opting to continue our road trip and distance ourselves from the haunting memories that lingered within those motel room walls. From that moment onward, I carried a sense of caution and skepticism with me, understanding that appearances can be deceiving, even in the most renowned tourist destinations. Las Vegas became a cautionary tale etched in my memory, a reminder to be vigilant and prioritize safety no matter where I found myself. As the miles rolled by on our journey, we left Las Vegas behind, but the echoes of that night stayed with us. It was a chilling experience that taught us to be mindful of our surroundings and to appreciate the value of personal safety, even in seemingly innocuous situations. So, to anyone who ventures to Las Vegas or any other unfamiliar city, I offer this cautionary tale. Look beyond the glittering facade, be aware of your surroundings, and trust your instincts. In the shadows of the dazzling lights, a darker reality may lurk, waiting to reveal itself to the unsuspecting traveler. Story 2. I used to believe that big, well-known hotel buildings were safer than local one-star motels. However, a terrifying experience made me realize that danger can lurk anywhere. It happened during a trip for a family reunion in a remote location. While many family members were staying with the host, I opted for my own space in a small development at the intersection of two major roads. This development only had a diner, a gas station, and a disproportionately large hotel chain. The hotel was fully booked with other family members who had the same idea. On the morning of the first day, I arrived before dawn, checked into my room, and noticed a peculiar man in the lobby. His eyes locked onto mine, and I felt a knot in my stomach. I tried to avoid his gaze, but I could sense him watching me. After settling into my room, I focused on preparing for the day ahead. Unfortunately, I completely forgot about the man as the events of the day consumed my attention. Leaving the hotel early in the morning and returning late at night, I was startled when I stepped back into the lobby. The creepy man was still sitting in the exact same spot, facing the entrance, as if he had been observing everyone all day long. He grinned disturbingly when he saw me and began to rise from his chair. I hurriedly made my way to the elevator, hoping to ignore him, but he caught up while I waited for it. The stench emanating from him was overwhelming, a clear sign of his poor hygiene. Holding my breath, I entered the elevator, but he didn't press the button for his floor. Feeling cornered, he attempted small talk, which I kept brief. I mentioned that my family was staying in the hotel as a precautionary measure, but he remained indifferent. As the doors opened, I quickly pressed the floor above mine to mislead him. Power walking to the nearest stairwell, I descended a level and sneaked into my room. Thankfully, he couldn't keep up, and I believed I had escaped his presence. However, I decided to step out of my room to grab a bucket of ice for my warmed-up sparkling grape juice. Initially, the hallway seemed empty, and I proceeded cautiously. I struggled with the ice machine but eventually managed to fill a bucket. To my horror, when I turned around, the creepy man was right behind me. I was paralyzed with shock as he grinned victoriously and approached me, uttering disturbing words. Overwhelmed by fear and disgust, I threw the entire bucket of ice in his face and sprinted down the hallway, desperate to reach the safety of my room. Frantically locking the door, I could hear his heavy footsteps behind me. Thankfully, his lack of physical fitness worked to my advantage, allowing me to create distance. I could see his shadow under the door, but as soon as the hallway light disappeared, I knew he was watching, waiting for an opportunity. Suppressing the urge to confront him, I called the front desk to inform them of the situation. A few minutes later, the nighttime desk employee arrived and escorted him back to his own room. Sleep eluded me that night due to the lingering fear. For the remaining nights of the reunion, I checked out early and decided to stay with my family instead, determined to avoid any further encounters with that old creep who had been stalking me. The incident at the hotel left me shaken, and the fear I experienced lingered in the back of my mind. Despite my decision to stay with my family for the remainder of the reunion, the memory of that encounter haunted me. I couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched, even in the company of loved ones. As the reunion progressed, I couldn't help but notice how certain family members seemed on edge as well. It turned out that a few of them had encountered the same creepy man in the hotel. Sharing our experiences brought a sense of solidarity, but it also deepened our concern. Who was this man and why was he targeting us? Together, we decided to report the incidents to the local authorities. They assured us that they would look into the matter and increase security measures at the hotel. While it provided some reassurance, the unsettling feeling remained. It was hard to relax and enjoy the reunion when the shadow of fear loomed over us. Despite the heightened security, the man seemed to evade capture. He became an elusive figure, always appearing when least expected and disappearing without a trace. The uncertainty of his presence made us question our own safety. We started taking extra precautions, walking in groups, and keeping a vigilant eye out for any suspicious activity. One evening, as the reunion was coming to an end, we gathered for a final dinner at a local restaurant. It was meant to be a joyful occasion, a chance to bid farewell to our extended family and relish the memories created. However, the underlying tension remained, casting a pall over the evening. As we sat at the long table, sharing stories and laughter, a sudden hush fell over the room. We turned our heads to see the man standing at the entrance. His eyes locked onto ours. Panic swept through the group as we scrambled to find a way to protect ourselves. It was as if he had orchestrated this final act of terror, choosing to reveal himself when we were at our most vulnerable. Without wasting a moment, we called the authorities, urging them to come immediately. The restaurant staff sprang into action, ensuring the doors were locked and providing assistance to our distressed family members. We huddled together, awaiting the arrival of help, praying for a swift resolution to this nightmare. Minutes felt like hours as we anxiously waited. The man stood motionless, his gaze fixed on us. It was a standoff between fear and resilience, and we refused to let fear win. With each passing moment, our determination grew stronger, and we found solace in the unity forged through this ordeal. Finally, the sound of sirens pierced the air as the police arrived. They swiftly apprehended the man, who put up minimal resistance. The relief that washed over us was immeasurable. Although the trauma remained, we took comfort in the fact that he would no longer pose a threat to us or anyone else. In the aftermath of the incident, our family vowed to stay connected and support one another. We realized the importance of vigilance and looking out for each other's safety. The horror we experienced brought us closer, reinforcing the bonds that held us together. As time passed, the memory of that fateful reunion began to fade, replaced by the resilience and strength we discovered within ourselves. We refused to let it define us, choosing instead to focus on the love and support that surrounded us. While the scars from that encounter may never fully heal, we emerged from the darkness with a renewed appreciation for the fragility of life and the power of unity. The horror story that unfolded in that hotel served as a reminder that safety is never guaranteed, but our resilience and determination can help us overcome even the darkest of moments. Story 3. I embarked on a solo journey through the breathtaking landscapes of the Scottish Highlands, driving a rental car from London all the way to the northernmost town of Mellag. It was a childhood dream to explore these lands independently on my own terms. This adventure marked the beginning of an extensive backpacking trip across Europe, but little did I know that it would come to a screeching halt on the British Isles. By the first evening on the road, I had already made significant progress into the Highlands. Being mindful of sightseeing, I decided not to continue driving in the dark. As the sun started its descent, I chanced upon a quaint inn on the side of the road. The inns in this region were unlike your typical American hotels, exuding a cozy and welcoming ambience. Upon entering, I noticed that the inn I chose blended seamlessly with its surroundings, perfectly embodying the charm of Scotland. Instead of a typical continental breakfast, they boasted a ground floor pub where homemade food and house-brewed drinks were served throughout the day. I arrived just in time for a delightful dinner. Since I was traveling alone, I took a seat at the bar, striking up a conversation with some friendly locals who immediately recognized me as a tourist. They kindly recommended must-see places along my journey and shared their favorite dishes and drinks. The innkeeper, a warm middle-aged woman, joined in the conversation and eventually assisted me in securing a room for the night. The atmosphere was relaxed and laid back, ideal for weary travelers. The Scots took pride in their unique brand of hospitality, creating an environment where strangers felt like old friends. After relishing a hearty beef stew and a pint of beer, the other guests retired to their rooms, leaving me alone with the innkeeper and the cook, who was busy tidying up the kitchen. Given the late summer sunset, it was common for locals to retire early. But as a visitor, I struggled to adjust to the extended daylight hours. This resulted in restlessness despite the comforting food. I shared my predicament with the innkeeper, who offered a solution in the form of a few drinks. Intrigued, I agreed, and she presented a bottle of Scottish liquor I had never encountered before. Surprised by the departure from beer, I didn't want to offend her by declining. She provided me with a tall glass of water to chase down the shots, though curiously, she didn't have one for herself. I felt a tinge of embarrassment, but over the next hour, I consumed 3 or 4 shots of the mysterious liquor, guzzling water alongside. As darkness finally enveloped the surroundings, I informed the innkeeper that I was ready to retire for the night. However, when I stood up, a wave of wrongness washed over me. Not only was I far drunker than intended, but I also felt an overwhelming sense of unease. Struggling to articulate my thoughts, my words evolved into gibberish. I looked at the innkeeper, desperately trying to convey my distress, but to no avail. The cook, who had finished his tasks, stood beside her, his imposing figure casting an ominous shadow. I recall one of them suggesting that I needed assistance in reaching my room, and with unsteady steps, I started walking away. My instinct was to head for the exit and find my car, but the cook intercepted me, effectively blocking my path. I was forced to turn around, and together, the innkeeper and the cook guided my belligerent self toward the center of the building, where a staircase awaited. One path led to the second floor, housing all the rooms, while the other descended into the cellar. Pausing briefly, my clouded mind registered the impossibility of ascending those stairs in my current state. The realization hit me like a bolt of lightning, but before I could react, a sharp blow landed on my back, propelling me down the stairs with brute force. The impact against the cold, hard surface of the cellar floor rendered me unconscious, plunging me into a world of darkness and oblivion. Hours passed, shrouded in unconsciousness, until the light of morning finally pierced through the fog of my mind. I awoke, disoriented and disheveled, finding myself sprawled in the back seat of my car. Panic engulfed me as I noticed the throbbing pain in my head and the intense, shooting ache in my abdomen. Instinctively, I glanced down, and dread consumed me as I discovered a crudely sutured wound on my left side. The realization hit me like a sledgehammer. I had been mercilessly harvested for one of my kidneys. The shock and horror washed over me, leaving me in a state of disbelief. My mind raced, desperate for a way to bring the perpetrators to justice. But the more I contemplated my predicament, the more I realized the futility of my situation. The culprits had meticulously orchestrated their heinous act, capitalizing on my vulnerability and leaving me helpless. My memories of that fateful night were fragmented, distorted by the concoction of excessive alcohol, a concussion from the fall, and the sedative-laced glass of water I had consumed after dinner. It became clear that the sinister individuals had meticulously manipulated the course of events, exploiting my weakened state to carry out their nefarious scheme. They had ample time to extract my kidney and transport my unconscious body far from the inn, erasing any trace of their dark operation. To compound my misfortune, I had been robbed of all my belongings, including my wallet and cell phone. Delirium and desperation consumed me as I grappled with the harsh reality of my situation. With no other recourse, I mustered the strength to flag down a passing motorist, pleading for their assistance in contacting the authorities. Providing them with whatever fragmented information I could recall, I beseeched them to take me to the nearest police station. At the station, I recounted my harrowing ordeal, offering every detail I could recollect, no matter how hazy or uncertain. However, my inability to provide concrete names or faces hindered the investigation, rendering my chances of justice elusive. The criminals responsible for this abhorrent organ harvesting operation seemed to vanish into thin air, evading capture and perpetuating their malevolent deeds. Filled with a profound sense of betrayal and helplessness, I embarked on a long and arduous journey back home 2 months earlier than anticipated. The aftermath of this horrific encounter haunted my every waking moment, leaving me scarred both physically and emotionally. The darkness that had infiltrated my Scottish adventure became a perpetual shadow, forever etched in my memory. To this day, the identity of those responsible remains a mystery. The black market organ trade continues to thrive in the shadows, preying on unsuspecting victims and eluding justice. My story stands as a grim reminder of the atrocities that can unfold in the most unexpected corners of the world, serving as a cautionary tale for those who dare to venture into the unknown. May my ordeal shed light on the urgent need to eradicate this vile industry and protect the innocent from its insidious grasp.